Even as Mae Martin lay motionless in the hospice bed, her silver hair spread across the sterile pillow, there was something resolute about her presence. The stroke had stolen her voice, but Charlie knew she was still fighting somewhere inside that failing body. "She's unresponsive," Nurse Patricia whispered, checking the monitors with practiced efficiency. "I'm afraid she might not make it through the night." Charlie's wife, Amber, squeezed his shoulder with what felt like genuine comfort. "I need some air," she said, her voice thick with emotion. It's too much." She kissed his cheek and left him alone with his mother. Charlie pulled the chair closer to the bed, studying Mae's face for any sign of consciousness. At 62, he'd inherited his mother's iron will and his father's military bearing. Sergeant Harold Martin had died when Charlie was 15, leaving Mae to raise him with a mixture of tough love and unwavering support. As he adjusted her blanket, something crinkled in the pocket of her nightgown. Charlie hesitated. Mae had always been fiercely private, but the weight of the moment overcame his reservations. Inside, he found a small brass key attached to a folded piece of paper. His mother's handwriting, though shakier than he remembered, was unmistakable. "Son, if you're reading this, something bad happened to me. Go to your dad's old Army footlocker to find the real truth. Trust no one until you know everything. Mom." Charlie's hands trembled slightly as he reread the note. His father's footlocker had been stored in Mae's garage for decades, gathering dust among Christmas decorations and forgotten memories. What truth could possibly be hidden there? The machines monitoring his mother's vitals began beeping more rapidly. Nurses rushed in, their faces grim as they worked to stabilize her condition. Charlie stepped back, clutching the key and note, as medical professionals fought to keep Mae Martin alive. 3 hours later, she was gone. At the funeral 2 days later, Charlie watched the faces around his mother's casket with new suspicion. Amber stood beside him in a black dress that seemed too form-fitting for mourning, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Neighbors, old friends, and distant relatives offered their condolences with practiced sympathy. Gerard Hicks, his business partner of 8 years, placed a heavy hand on Charlie's shoulder. "Mae was a remarkable woman," Gerard said, his voice carrying the smooth confidence that had made him successful in their construction company. "If you need anything, time off, help with arrangements, just say the word." Charlie nodded, studying Gerard's face. They'd built Martin and Hicks Construction from the ground up, pooling their military experience and construction knowledge into a profitable enterprise. Gerard had been like a brother to him, but Mae's note had planted seeds of doubt that were already taking root. That evening, after the last mourner had left and Amber had gone to bed claiming exhaustion, Charlie made his way to his mother's house. The garage smelled of motor oil and sawdust, familiar scents that brought back memories of learning woodwork at his father's side. The footlocker sat exactly where it had for 20 years, beneath a blue tarp in the corner. Charlie used his mother's key to open the heavy lock, and the lid creaked as it rose. Inside, beneath his father's military decorations and old photographs, Charlie found a manila envelope marked for Charlie's eyes only. His heart pounded as he opened it and found 3 items that would change everything. Surveillance photographs of Amber and Gerard together, bank statements showing transfers from their joint account to a private account in Gerard's name, and a letter from Mae dated just 6 months ago. "Charlie," the letter began, "I discovered Amber's affair with Gerard 18 months ago. I hired a private investigator named Joe Medina to document everything. I didn't want to destroy your happiness unless I was certain, but now I have proof they've been planning to take everything from you. Gerard has been manipulating the company books, and Amber has been moving money from your accounts. They think you're too trusting to notice. They're wrong about that. You're Harold Martin's son." Charlie sat in the musty garage, staring at photographs of his wife and best friend embracing outside a downtown hotel. His chest felt tight, but it wasn't grief anymore. It was something colder, more calculated. The final item in the envelope was a business card for Joe Medina, private investigator, with a note clipped to it. "Joe has everything. He's waiting for your call." Chapter 2. The Network Reveals. Charlie spent the night in his home office, staring at the photographs and documents until dawn. When Amber found him there, still wearing his funeral suit, she rushed to his side with apparent concern. "Oh, honey, you look exhausted," she said, running her fingers through his graying hair. "Come to bed. You need rest." Charlie looked up at his wife of 15 years, studying the face he'd once loved unconditionally. Amber had aged gracefully, her auburn hair still thick and lustrous, her figure maintained through expensive yoga classes and personal training sessions he'd paid for without question. Now he wondered how many of those sessions had been spent with Gerard. "I keep thinking about what Mom said before the stroke," Charlie lied smoothly, "about family being the only thing that matters." Amber's hands stilled for just a moment. She was probably confused, Charlie. Strokes affect memory and speech. "Maybe." Charlie stood and kissed her forehead, noting how she tensed slightly at his touch. "I think I'll take Gerard up on his offer for some time off. Maybe we could take that trip to Colorado you've been wanting." Her face brightened with what looked like genuine enthusiasm. "Really? When were you thinking?" "Next month, maybe. Give me time to get the company affairs in order." After Amber left for her morning yoga class, Charlie called Joe Medina. They arranged to meet at a diner 20 miles outside town, away from any place he might encounter familiar faces. Joe Medina was a compact man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much of humanity's worst impulses. He slid a thick folder across the diner table to Charlie. "Your mother was thorough," Joe said. "She wanted ironclad evidence before she told you anything." The folder contained 18 months of documentation: hotel receipts, restaurant bills, photographs from multiple locations, and most damning of all, recorded conversations between Amber and Gerard discussing their plans. "They're not just having an affair," Joe explained as Charlie flipped through the evidence. "Gerard's been systematically moving company assets into shell corporations he controls. Your wife's been helping by gradually liquidating your personal investments and transferring the proceeds to accounts Gerard established." Charlie's jaw tightened as he read the financial documents. "How much?" "Conservative estimate? They've stolen about $2 million over the past year. But here's the interesting part. They're planning something bigger. From what I've observed, they're setting up to disappear entirely within the next 6 months." Charlie looked up from the documents. "Disappear?" Joe nodded grimly. "Gerard's been establishing a new identity. Fake passport, driver's license, the works. Your wife doesn't know about that part yet. She thinks they're just going to divorce you and move to another state. But Gerard's planning to vanish with everything, including her money. Son of a bitch is planning to double-cross her too." "Gets better," Joe continued. "I've got surveillance footage of Gerard meeting with Tommy Carver, a known fence who specializes in moving stolen goods. They've been discussing how to liquidate the heavy equipment from your construction yard without raising suspicions." Charlie felt his military training kick in, the same cold, analytical mindset that had kept him alive during 2 tours in Afghanistan. This wasn't just betrayal. It was warfare, and he'd been fighting with one hand tied behind his back because he hadn't known there was a battle. "What else do you have?" Joe smiled grimly. "Your mother was smart. She had me investigate Gerard's background more thoroughly. Turns out Gerard Hicks isn't his real name. He's actually Gerard Hoffman, and he's got a history of this kind of thing. 3 other businesses in 2 different states, same pattern. Gain trust, embezzle assets, disappear. Other victims? 2 are dead, suspicious accidents. The third, a man named Caesar Murphy in Arizona. He's still alive, but lost everything. Gerard left him financially ruined and emotionally destroyed." Charlie closed the folder, his mind already working through possibilities. "I need to contact this Caesar Murphy." "Already arranged," Joe said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "He's been waiting years for someone to go after Gerard. He'll help however he can." Charlie spent the rest of the day planning his first moves. He drove to a storage facility across town and rented a unit under a false name, using cash and a fake ID Joe had provided. There, he established a base of operations where he could work without Amber or Gerard's knowledge. That evening, Gerard stopped by the house unannounced, ostensibly to check on Charlie's well-being. Charlie watched from the kitchen window as Gerard and Amber spoke privately by Gerard's truck, their body language intimate and conspiratorial. When Gerard came inside, he wore his usual mask of concerned friendship. "How are you holding up, partner?" "Taking it one day at a time," Charlie replied, offering Gerard a beer. "I've been thinking about what you said about taking some time off." "Absolutely. Whatever you need. Actually, I was hoping you could handle a big project that came in today. Developer wants us to clear 100 acres outside town for a new subdivision. It's a 6-month contract, worth about $800,000. Gerard's eyes lit up with barely concealed greed. "I could definitely handle that for you. Give you time to grieve properly." Charlie nodded, knowing he'd just handed Gerard exactly what the man wanted: unfettered access to company resources and a legitimate reason to move heavy equipment around. What Gerard didn't know was that Charlie had invented the project entirely, and he'd be watching every move Gerard made. Chapter 3: The Deeper Truth. Charlie's phone conversation with Caesar Murphy revealed the full scope of Gerard's pattern. Caesar, now in his 60s and working as a night security guard to make ends meet, had lost his construction business, his home, and his wife to Gerard's manipulations 8 years earlier. "He's a predator," Caesar explained over the phone, his voice heavy with old pain. "He targets successful men with something he wants, usually money or property, and he gets close enough to destroy them from the inside. Your wife, she's probably not his first accomplice." "What do you mean?" "Gerard had a relationship with my wife, too. Turned her against me, made her believe I was hiding money from her, that I didn't appreciate her. She helped him access our accounts, even signed documents transferring property ownership. When everything collapsed, she realized what he'd done, but it was too late." Charlie felt a chill run through him. "What happened to her?" "Car accident, 6 months after Gerard disappeared with everything. Brakes failed on a mountain road." Caesar's voice was bitter. "Police called it mechanical failure, but the timing was convenient for Gerard. Dead women don't testify." Charlie's military instincts went into high alert. This wasn't just about money anymore. Gerard was potentially a killer who eliminated witnesses and loose ends. "I've got evidence," Charlie said carefully. "Enough to prove fraud and theft. But I need to know everything about his methods, his patterns." Caesar's laugh was harsh. "Evidence won't stop him, son. I had evidence too. Gerard's got connections, dirty lawyers, corrupt officials, people who make evidence disappear for the right price. He's not just a thief, he's part of a network." Over the next 3 days, Charlie deepened his investigation with Joe Medina's help. They discovered Gerard's connections to a sophisticated criminal organization that specialized in identity theft, financial fraud, and when necessary, permanent solutions to problematic witnesses. The network included Tommy Carver, who laundered money through his pawn shop operations, and Reginald Becker, a corrupt attorney who specialized in manipulating legal proceedings. Most disturbing was Gerard's connection to Leon Benjamin, a man who officially worked as a mechanic but was suspected in several suspicious accidents involving brake failures and mechanical malfunctions. Charlie realized he wasn't just fighting one man. He was up against an organization that had perfected the art of financial murder. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated Harold Martin's son. Charlie began implementing what he privately called Operation Footlocker, named after the source of his awakening. Using his military contacts and construction industry connections, he assembled his own network of allies. His first recruit was Tyler Knight, a former Special Forces explosives expert who now worked in demolition. Tyler had served under Charlie in Afghanistan and owed him his life after Charlie had carried him 2 miles through enemy territory with a shattered leg. The second was Norman Pike, a forensic accountant with a reputation for being absolutely incorruptible. Norman had helped Charlie set up the construction company's financial systems years ago and had always been suspicious of Gerard's financial suggestions. The third was Rudy Cole, a federal investigator with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network who specialized in tracking money laundering operations. Rudy had been building a case against Gerard's network for months, but lacked the inside access Charlie could provide. Charlie's plan was elegant in its complexity. Rather than simply exposing Gerard and Amber, he would turn Gerard's own network against him while simultaneously protecting the evidence and witnesses Gerard's organization would try to eliminate. Phase 1 involved feeding Gerard false information about the fictional land development project, allowing Gerard to commit to larger and more traceable thefts, while Charlie documented everything through hidden cameras and financial monitoring. Phase 2 would involve manipulating the relationships within Gerard's criminal network, turning them against each other by making each think the others were planning to betray them. Phase 3 would be the convergence, simultaneous exposure of the entire network to multiple law enforcement agencies while eliminating Gerard's ability to disappear or retaliate. But Charlie had a fourth phase that he shared with no one: personal justice for the years of betrayal and the threat to his life. Gerard and Amber would pay for their betrayal in ways that went beyond legal consequences. As Charlie finalized his preparations, he called Amber from his storage unit base of operations. "Honey, I've been thinking about that Colorado trip. Let's make it special. Maybe rent a cabin in the mountains, really get away from everything." "That sounds wonderful," Amber replied, and Charlie could hear the false warmth in her voice. "When were you thinking? How about next month? Give me time to wrap up this big project Gerard's handling." What Amber didn't know was that the remote cabin Charlie was planning to rent would be the perfect location for the final confrontation. Isolated, private, and far from any help when the truth finally came out. Chapter 4. The Network Strikes Back. Charlie's plan hit its first complication when Joe Medina called with urgent news. "They're accelerating their timeline," Joe said, his voice tense. "I intercepted communications between Gerard and Reginald Becker. They're planning to move everything within 2 weeks, not 6 months." Charlie felt his stomach drop. What changed? Near as I can tell, someone tipped them off that there might be surveillance. Gerard spooked, and when he gets spooked, people disappear permanently. Charlie's mind raced through the implications. If Gerard was moving to the elimination phase of his plan, both Charlie and any witnesses were in immediate danger. What about Amber? That's the interesting part. For what I can gather, Gerard's planning to eliminate her too. She knows too much, and she's becoming emotionally unstable. Apparently, she's been talking about backing out of the plan, maybe coming clean to you. Charlie felt a moment of something that might have been hope, but he crushed it quickly. Amber's potential change of heart was too little, too late. She'd made her choice 18 months ago when she first climbed into Gerard's bed. "I need to move faster," Charlie said. "Is Tyler ready?" "Tyler's standing by, but Charlie, these people have killed before. Gerard's not just a financial predator anymore. He's evolved into something much more dangerous." That evening, Charlie implemented an emergency protocol he'd hoped not to need. He activated a sophisticated surveillance system Tyler had installed in Charlie's home, office, and vehicle, complete with panic buttons and GPS tracking. If Gerard made a move against him, at least there would be evidence. Charlie also moved most of his liquid assets to accounts Gerard couldn't access, using financial pathways Norman Pike had established. If he didn't survive the next phase, at least Gerard wouldn't profit from his death. The trap began to spring the following morning when Gerard arrived at Charlie's office with forged documents that would transfer ownership of Martin and Hicks Construction to a shell corporation Gerard controlled. "I hate to bring business up so soon after May's funeral," Gerard said with practiced sympathy, "but this new development project requires some corporate restructuring for tax purposes. Just need your signature on these documents." Charlie pretended to read through the papers while actually activating the recording system Tyler had built into his desk. Every word, every gesture was being documented in multiple locations. "This seems to give you a lot of control," Charlie said carefully. Gerard's mask slipped slightly. "It's just temporary, partner. Once the project's complete, we'll restructure back to the original agreement." Charlie signed the documents, knowing that Gerard had just committed multiple federal crimes on camera. But more importantly, Gerard had revealed his timeline. The construction company assets would be liquidated within days. That afternoon, Charlie received a call that changed everything. Caesar Murphy was dead, killed in what police were calling a home invasion robbery. But Joe Medina's contacts in Arizona confirmed what Charlie already suspected. Nothing had been stolen, and Caesar had been tortured before he died. "They wanted to know what he told you," Joe explained, "which means they know you're investigating." Charlie felt the familiar cold fury settle over him, the same emotional state that had kept him alive in combat. This wasn't just about money anymore. Gerard had escalated to murder, and Charlie was clearly next on the list. That evening, Charlie confronted Amber in their bedroom, but not the way she expected. "I need to tell you something," he said, sitting on the edge of their bed. "I've been thinking about selling the business. Gerard made an offer to buy me out." Amber's face went pale. "Sell the business? Charlie, that's your life's work. Maybe it's time for a change. We could take the money and travel, see the world." Charlie watched her carefully. "Gerard said he'd give us fair market value, about $4 million. The relief on Amber's face was unmistakable. $4 million was far more than she and Gerard had managed to steal, and it would solve all their problems without the risk of continued crime. That might be good for us," she said carefully. "A fresh start." Charlie nodded. "I'm meeting with Gerard tomorrow to discuss the details. Why don't you come with me, since this affects both of us?" Amber agreed, not knowing she was walking into the final phase of Charlie's trap. The meeting Charlie had arranged wasn't going to be about selling the business. It was going to be about ending Gerard's operation permanently. Chapter 5. The Point of No Return. The meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at the construction company's main office, a sprawling complex of warehouses and equipment yards that Charlie and Gerard had built together over 8 years. What Gerard didn't know was that Tyler Knight had spent the previous night installing sophisticated surveillance equipment throughout the building, and that Rudy Cole's federal task force was positioned nearby. Charlie arrived early, using the time to make final preparations. In his desk drawer, easily accessible, he placed a loaded Glock 19, not because he planned to use it, but because he expected Gerard might try to eliminate him during the meeting. Charlie's real weapons were information, evidence, and a legal net that was about to close around Gerard's entire network. Amber arrived first, nervous energy radiating from her every movement. She dressed carefully in a blue business suit that Charlie recognized as one of her favorites, and she kept checking her reflection in the window. "Are you sure about this?" she asked for the third time. "Selling everything we built?" Charlie looked at his wife, studying the face he'd once kissed goodnight every evening for 15 years. "I'm sure about a lot of things now," he said quietly. Gerard arrived precisely on time, accompanied by Tommy Carver and another man Charlie didn't recognize, a thin, cold-eyed individual who had the bearing of someone comfortable with violence. Charlie's military instincts immediately classified the stranger as a threat. "Charlie, good to see you," Gerard said with his usual false warmth. "This is Leon Benjamin, my business consultant. He's here to help with the financial transition." Charlie felt his blood freeze. Leon Benjamin, the man suspected of multiple mechanical accidents. Gerard had brought a killer to what was supposed to be a business meeting. The conversation began normally enough, with Gerard presenting documents that would transfer ownership of the construction company to his shell corporation for the agreed-upon $4 million. But Charlie noticed Leon positioning himself near the office's exit, and Tommy Carver's hand remained suspiciously close to his jacket pocket. "Before we proceed," Charlie said calmly, "I think there are some things we need to discuss about the money that's already been transferred out of company accounts." Gerard's face went still. "I'm not sure what you mean." Charlie opened his desk drawer, ostensibly reaching for a pen, but ensuring his hand was near the Glock. "I mean the $2 million that's been systematically stolen over the past 18 months. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Amber looked confused, glancing between Charlie and Gerard with growing alarm. "Charlie," Gerard said carefully, "I think grief might be affecting your judgment. Maybe we should postpone this meeting." "Oh, I don't think so." Charlie smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "You see, Gerard, I know everything. About the shell corporations, about your real name being Gerard Hoffman, about the 3 other businesses you destroyed, about Caesar Murphy, who you had killed 3 days ago." Leon Benjamin's hand moved toward his jacket, but Charlie was faster. The Glock appeared in Charlie's hand with practiced efficiency, trained on the killer with military precision. "I wouldn't," Charlie said quietly. "Tyler." The office door opened, and Tyler Knight entered with his own weapon drawn, followed by 2 federal agents. Gerard's face went white as he realized the trap had closed around him. "Gerard Hoffman," Rudy Cole announced, showing his badge, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and suspicion of murder." But Gerard wasn't finished. With desperate cunning, he grabbed Amber and pressed a concealed knife to her throat. "Everyone back off, or she dies." Amber's scream was genuine terror, and for a moment, Charlie felt a flicker of the old protective instinct. But it passed quickly, replaced by cold calculation. "Go ahead," Charlie said quietly, never lowering his weapon. Gerard's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "I said go ahead. Kill her." Charlie's voice was absolutely steady. "She's been helping you steal from me for 18 months. She chose you over me. Why would I care what happens to her now?" Amber's face went white with the realization that Charlie knew everything, and that her husband, the man she'd shared 15 years with, was willing to let her die for her betrayal. Gerard's hand wavered. He'd counted on Charlie's love for Amber as leverage, but he'd miscalculated the depth of Charlie's cold fury. "Charlie, please," Amber whispered. "I can explain." "Explain what?" Charlie's eyes never left Gerard's. "Explain how you moved our money into his accounts? Explain how you helped him plan to destroy everything I built? Explain how you spread your legs for him in hotel rooms while I was working to support you." Chapter 6. The Reckoning Begins. The standoff lasted only seconds longer before Gerard made his fatal mistake. Realizing that Amber was worthless as a hostage, he shoved her away and lunged for the door, hoping Leon Benjamin and Tommy Carver could provide enough chaos for his escape. Tyler Knight put Leon Benjamin down with a single shot to the shoulder, while Rudy Cole tackled Tommy Carver. Gerard made it 3 steps before Charlie's tackle sent both men crashing into the office's filing cabinets. The fight was brief and brutal. Gerard was strong, but Charlie had 8 years of military combat training and 18 months of suppressed rage fueling his movements. When Tyler and Rudy pulled Charlie off Gerard, the man who destroyed 3 other lives was unconscious and bleeding from multiple facial fractures. "Feel better?" Tyler asked with grim satisfaction. Charlie looked down at his bloodied knuckles and felt no satisfaction at all. Only the cold certainty that this was just the beginning. Not yet. The federal agents led Gerard, Leon, and Tommy away in handcuffs, but Charlie's attention was focused on Amber, who sat on the office floor, tears streaming down her face. "Charlie, please," she said through her sobs. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared, and Gerard convinced me you were hiding money from me, and—" "Stop." Charlie's voice cut through her explanations like a blade. "Just stop." He knelt down to her level, close enough that only she could hear his words. "You had 18 months to come to me. 18 months to tell me the truth. Instead, you helped him steal everything I worked for, and you let him plan to kill me. I didn't know about the killing. I swear I didn't know." Charlie studied his wife's face, looking for any sign of the woman he'd once loved. "Maybe you didn't, but you knew about the theft. You knew about the betrayal, and you chose to keep helping him right up until the moment you realized you might face consequences." He stood up, towering over her. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to prison, probably for 5 to 10 years as an accessory to fraud. When you get out, you'll find that every asset we own together has been legally transferred out of your reach." Amber's face went white. "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. See, while you were busy planning my destruction, I was documenting yours. Every illegal transfer, every forged signature, every lie you told to bank officials, it's all evidence of your willing participation in Gerard's scheme." Charlie walked to his desk and pulled out a thick folder. "Divorce papers already filed. Asset protection documents already notarized. By the time you're processed and booked, you'll own nothing but the clothes you're wearing. Charlie, please. I'm your wife. We can work this out." Charlie looked at her for a long moment, remembering their wedding day, their anniversaries, the quiet moments when he believed they were building a life together. "No," he said quietly. "You stopped being my wife the day you chose Gerard Hoffman over me. What you are now is a criminal who happens to share my last name, and that's going to change too." Federal agents arrived to arrest Amber, and Charlie watched without emotion as they read her rights and led her away. When the office was finally empty except for Tyler and himself, Charlie sat heavily in his desk chair. "What now?" Tyler asked. Charlie looked around the office, seeing it clearly for the first time in months. The photographs on his desk were all lies now, pictures of him and Amber at company parties, vacations, celebrations. Monuments to a marriage that had been dead for 18 months while he lived in ignorance. "Now we make sure Gerard's network can never hurt anyone else," Charlie said. "And then we make sure he never sees freedom again." The federal case against Gerard's network was solid, with enough evidence to put the core members away for decades. But Charlie had learned something important from Caesar Murphy's death. The legal system could be manipulated, evidence could disappear, and dangerous men sometimes found ways to escape justice. Charlie wasn't willing to take that risk. Chapter 7. Network Destruction. Over the next 3 months, Charlie systematically dismantled Gerard's criminal organization using methods that went far beyond legal proceedings. While federal prosecutors built their cases, Charlie implemented his own form of justice. The first phase involved Tommy Carver's pawn shop empire, which served as the money laundering hub for Gerard's network. Charlie used his construction industry connections to discover that Tommy had been operating without proper licensing for hazardous materials disposal. A series of anonymous tips to environmental agencies resulted in surprise inspections that revealed illegal chemical storage and improper waste disposal. The resulting fines and legal costs bankrupted Tommy's operation within weeks. But Charlie wasn't content with financial ruin. He wanted to ensure Tommy could never rebuild. Using information provided by Norman Pike's forensic accounting investigation, Charlie fed evidence of Tommy's previous money laundering operations to federal prosecutors, resulting in additional charges that carried mandatory minimum sentences. Reginald Becker, Gerard's corrupt attorney, proved more challenging to neutralize. As a lawyer, Becker had sophisticated knowledge of legal protections and evidence handling. But Charlie had Tyler Knight, and Tyler had skills that went far beyond conventional investigation. Tyler's surveillance of Becker revealed the attorney's weakness, a gambling addiction that had put him deeply in debt to some very dangerous people. Charlie arranged for Tyler to approach Becker's creditors with an interesting proposition. They could have their money immediately if they agreed to increase pressure on Becker in specific ways. Within 2 weeks, Becker was so desperate to pay his gambling debts that he began stealing from his legitimate clients' escrow accounts. When Norman Pike anonymously tipped off the State Bar Association with detailed evidence of Becker's embezzlement, the attorney lost his license, his practice, and his freedom in rapid succession. Leon Benjamin, the suspected killer, required more direct action. Charlie couldn't risk the possibility that Benjamin might escape prosecution or eliminate witnesses before trial. Using skills learned in Afghanistan, Charlie began stalking Benjamin, learning his routines, his weaknesses, his habits. Benjamin lived alone in a rundown apartment complex, survived on disability payments from a supposedly injured back, and spent most evenings drinking at a bar frequented by other ex-criminals. He was paranoid, but not paranoid enough. He never noticed Tyler's surveillance or Charlie's preparation. Charlie's solution for Benjamin was elegant in its simplicity. Using his access to construction equipment and Tyler's expertise with explosives, Charlie arranged for a very convincing gas leak explosion in Benjamin's apartment building. The explosion occurred at precisely 3:47 a.m., when Benjamin would be in his apartment, alone, and too drunk to escape quickly. The official investigation concluded that corroded gas lines had created a tragic accident. Benjamin's body was identified through dental records, and the case was closed without suspicion. Charlie felt no remorse. Benjamin had tortured Caesar Murphy to death and would have killed Charlie without hesitation. But Gerard himself remained the primary target, and Charlie was saving his most creative revenge for the man who had destroyed his marriage and threatened his life. Gerard was being held without bail pending trial, housed in a federal detention facility 40 miles from Charlie's hometown. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Financial records, recorded conversations, testimony from multiple victims. But Charlie knew that wasn't enough. Men like Gerard had resources, connections, and contingency plans. Even if convicted, Gerard might find ways to reduce his sentence, arrange early release, or eliminate threats to his safety. Charlie needed Gerard to understand that there would be no escape, no appeals, no second chances. Charlie's solution required patience and careful planning. Using connections from his military service, Charlie identified 3 inmates in Gerard's detention facility who had particular skills and flexible moral standards. Through a series of intermediaries, Charlie arranged for these inmates to receive substantial financial support for their families in exchange for ensuring Gerard's time in prison would be educational. The first lesson occurred during Gerard's second week in detention. Gerard woke to find photographs of Charlie scattered around his cell. Pictures of Charlie in military uniform, Charlie with construction equipment, Charlie with Tyler Knight and other dangerous-looking men. No threats, no messages, just the clear implication that Charlie had reach even in a federal detention. The second lesson involved Gerard's commissary account being mysteriously emptied and redistributed to other inmates, along with rumors that Gerard was a rat who had cooperated with federal investigators to reduce his own sentence. In the prison ecosystem, such rumors could be fatal. The third lesson was more direct. Gerard was cornered in the prison shower by 3 inmates who delivered a message from Charlie. This is just the beginning. When you get to federal prison, it gets worse. When you get out, if you get out, it gets much worse. Gerard's attempt to report the threats to prison officials was met with indifference. Prison violence was common, and Gerard was just another criminal without connections or influence. But Charlie's most devastating psychological warfare was yet to come. Chapter 8. Poisoning the Well. Charlie's final assault on Gerard's network focused on the one thing Gerard valued above everything else: his reputation and identity. Gerard had spent years building the persona of a successful businessman, and Charlie was determined to burn that image to the ground. Working with Joe Medina, Charlie orchestrated a comprehensive media campaign that exposed Gerard's true history across multiple states. Local newspapers in Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado ran detailed stories about Gerard Hoffman's criminal career, complete with photographs of his victims and their families. The stories painted Gerard not as a sophisticated criminal mastermind, but as a cowardly predator who targeted elderly business owners and destroyed families for profit. Charlie made sure every article mentioned Gerard's cowardice during his arrest, how he'd held a knife to an innocent woman's throat and begged for mercy when cornered. But the media campaign was just the beginning. Charlie used his construction industry connections to ensure that Gerard's true identity and criminal history became common knowledge among contractors, suppliers, and business owners across the region. Gerard's face appeared on do not hire lists and fraud prevention warnings circulated throughout professional networks. Charlie also targeted Gerard's family, though with surgical precision that avoided harming innocent relatives. Gerard's elderly mother, who lived in a retirement community believing her son was a successful businessman, received anonymous packages containing newspaper clippings about Gerard's crimes. His estranged brother, a teacher in another state, found his school's parent association discussing how to protect children from predators like Gerard Hoffman. The psychological impact on Gerard was immediate and severe. Prison officials reported that Gerard had become increasingly paranoid, convinced that every new inmate was an assassin sent by Charlie. He'd stopped eating regularly, fearing poisoning, and had requested protective custody multiple times. But Charlie's most devastating move involved Gerard's final asset, a woman named Delia Gardner, who lived in Montana and believed Gerard was planning to marry her after his business difficulties were resolved. Gerard had been sending her letters from prison, maintaining the fiction that he was a victim of false accusations and would soon be vindicated. Charlie arranged for Delia to receive the complete file of evidence against Gerard, including audio recordings of Gerard and Amber planning Charlie's financial destruction and potential elimination. The package also included photographs of Gerard with multiple other women, financial records showing he'd stolen money from her, and a detailed psychological profile prepared by federal investigators. Delia's response was swift and brutal. She testified before a federal grand jury about Gerard's fraud conspiracy, provided evidence of interstate money laundering, and agreed to cooperate fully with prosecutors in exchange for immunity. Her testimony added multiple federal charges to Gerard's case and eliminated any possibility of a plea bargain. The final psychological blow came when Charlie arranged for Gerard to receive a letter in prison, ostensibly from Amber. The letter, which Tyler had forged using samples of Amber's handwriting, contained Amber's confession that she had been working with federal investigators for months before Gerard's arrest. The letter detailed how Amber had recorded their conversations, photographed financial documents, and provided prosecutors with intimate details of Gerard's methods and psychology. It portrayed Amber as a long-term federal informant who had manipulated Gerard into revealing the full scope of his criminal network. Of course, none of it was true. Amber was facing her own federal charges and had refused all cooperation offers. But Gerard had no way to verify the letter's authenticity, and his paranoid mental state made him susceptible to believing the worst possible scenario. The letter's final paragraph was Charlie's masterpiece of psychological warfare. "Gerard, I need you to know that Charlie knew about us from the beginning. He's been planning this for years, waiting for you to reveal your whole network so he could destroy all of you at once. You never fooled him. He fooled you. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison knowing that you were outsmarted by a man you thought was too stupid to see through your schemes." Gerard's mental breakdown was complete within days of receiving the letter. Prison officials placed him on suicide watch after finding him trying to electrocute himself with exposed wiring in his cell. His defense attorney requested psychiatric evaluation, but federal prosecutors opposed any delays, arguing that Gerard was malingering to avoid trial. Charlie felt no sympathy for Gerard's psychological collapse. The man had tortured Caesar Murphy before killing him, had planned Charlie's death, and had shown no remorse for any of his victims. Gerard's current suffering was insignificant compared to the pain he'd inflicted on others. But Charlie wasn't finished yet. He had one final lesson to teach Gerard about the consequences of betrayal. Chapter 9. Final Justice. Gerard's trial began on a cold February morning, 8 months after his arrest. Charlie attended every day of proceedings, sitting in the front row where Gerard could see him clearly. He never spoke, never showed emotion, just watched as the evidence methodically destroyed any hope Gerard might have harbored for acquittal. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Financial records, surveillance footage, recorded conversations, testimony from multiple victims, and evidence of Gerard's involvement in Caesar Murphy's murder created an unassailable narrative of guilt. Gerard's defense attorney could do little more than argue for leniency, claiming his client had suffered mental health issues that impaired his judgment. Charlie found bitter satisfaction in watching Gerard's composure crumble under the weight of evidence. The confident predator who had manipulated so many victims was revealed as a pathetic, desperate man who whimpered when confronted with the consequences of his actions. Amber's separate trial had concluded 2 months earlier. She'd received a 12-year sentence for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and perjury. Charlie had attended her sentencing hearing, watching without emotion as his former wife begged for mercy and claimed to be a victim of Gerard's manipulation. The defendant was an active and willing participant in a scheme that caused severe financial and emotional harm to multiple victims, the judge had said during sentencing. Her claims of victimization ring hollow given the extensive evidence of her voluntary participation in criminal activities over an 18-month period. Amber had looked at Charlie with desperate eyes as the bailiff led her away, but Charlie had felt nothing resembling the love or compassion that had once defined their relationship. She was simply another criminal facing appropriate consequences for her choices. Gerard's trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all 27 counts, including conspiracy to commit murder in connection with Caesar Murphy's death. At sentencing, Gerard's mother pleaded for mercy, describing the son she remembered from childhood, a boy who'd helped elderly neighbors and excelled in school. Charlie listened without sympathy, knowing that predators often began as apparently normal children before choosing paths of manipulation and cruelty. The judge's sentence was everything Charlie had hoped for. Life in prison without possibility of parole for the murder conspiracy, plus additional consecutive sentences for fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Gerard would die in prison, never again free to destroy innocent lives. But Charlie had one final message to deliver. As Gerard was led away in shackles, Charlie stood and spoke loudly enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. "Gerard, I want you to know something. Every day, for the rest of your life, I want you to remember that you brought this on yourself. You chose to betray me. You chose to steal from me. You chose to threaten my life. Everything that happened to you was the direct consequence of your own decisions." Gerard turned to look at Charlie, his face a mask of hatred and defeat. "This isn't over," he whispered. Charlie smiled. It was the coldest expression anyone in that courtroom had ever seen. "For you, it is." 6 months later, Charlie received news that brought him deep satisfaction. Gerard had been found dead in his maximum security prison cell, apparently killed by inmates who discovered his history of targeting elderly victims. Prison officials classified it as an inmate-on-inmate homicide and closed the investigation after a perfunctory review. Charlie felt no guilt about Gerard's death. He hadn't ordered it or arranged it. Prison justice operated by its own harsh rules, and predators like Gerard rarely survived long among populations of violent criminals who maintained their own moral codes. Tyler Knight found Charlie sitting on his back porch that evening, drinking bourbon and watching the sunset over the mountains. "Heard the news about Gerard," Tyler said, settling into the chair beside his old friend. "Yeah," Charlie replied quietly. "I heard. How do you feel about it?" Charlie considered the question, examining his emotions honestly. "I feel like justice was finally served." Gerard Hoffman spent his adult life destroying other people's lives for profit. He showed no mercy to his victims, no remorse for his crimes, and no hesitation about planning murder when it served his purposes. Charlie took a sip of bourbon and continued. "My mother always told me that actions have consequences." Gerard learned that lesson too late. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled over the mountain valley. Charlie had lost a wife, a business partner, and the illusion of security that had defined his previous life. But he'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that he was strong enough to protect himself and exact justice when the legal system proved insufficient. Charlie Martin had never been a man who forgave betrayal or forgot threats to his survival. Gerard Hoffman and Amber Martin had learned that lesson definitively, and their fates served as permanent warnings to anyone else who might consider Charlie an easy target. The war was over, and Charlie had won completely. In the months that followed, Charlie rebuilt his construction company with Tyler Knight as his partner, established a new life free from the lies and betrayals that had nearly destroyed him, and occasionally visited Mae Martin's grave to tell her how her final message had saved his life. Mae's note had been right about one thing. Family was the only thing that mattered. But Charlie had learned to define family as the people who earn trust through loyalty and prove their worth through action, not through blood relations or marriage certificates. Gerard Hoffman was dead. Amber Martin was serving 12 years in federal prison, and their criminal network had been completely dismantled. Charlie Martin was alive, wealthy, and surrounded by people he could trust absolutely. Justice, Charlie reflected, sometimes required a patient man with a long memory and the wisdom to strike at exactly the right moment. His father had taught him that lesson during military service, and his mother had reminded him of it with her final message. The truth in the footlocker had set Charlie free. Free from deception, free from betrayal, and free from the burden of showing mercy to those who deserve none. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.